Well, good morning, everyone. For a reference, no one will understand in the year 2023. I feel like I'm on Blind Date, which is a TV show from the early 90s in the UK. So I've seen a lot of confused faces, if that makes sense. So yeah, we're here today to talk about the role of community in building a legacy, mission-driven brand. And there are very few people better to talk about it than Laura, who I've shared a couple of conversations with before this. The Honey Pot Company is a fascinating brand. It's what I like to call a sort of celebrity brand, where people love it kind of unconditionally, irrationally. They don't have customers, they have acolytes. I think a lot of that is down to how they build community. So it should be a very interesting chat. I think the last session proved that you guys have a lot of interesting questions too, so I'll try not to take up all the time. But yeah, let's begin. Laura, first, tell us your personal journey. I think Colgate-Palmolive, again, the Crash of Champions. And then tell us about the journey of the brand. How did it begin? Why did it begin? Where did you see that space in the market? And where are you today?
Great, I can do that. Yes, so Colgate alum. I started my post-MBA career at Colgate-Palmolive. Phenomenal company, incredible training ground, as you mentioned, in terms of really thinking about the role of strategy and how brands can come to life and really permeate and delight people in their everyday. And so I spent a number of years there working across kind of the core sort of marketing, sales, strategy roles. And then, the time came. I was ready to move to an earlier stage company where I could make a bigger impact. And so left Colgate to run the baby business at Zarbee's Naturals, which is acquired by J&J/Kenvue, so I see there's a Kenvue person in the audience as well, and a handful of other alums who used to work on my team. And so incredible mission-driven brand in terms of wanting to help parents through those early years with babies and kids and their illness and their sickness. So really incredible experience. The products themselves worked phenomenally well for meeting the needs of those sort of sleep-deprived, concerned parents and also those poor, sick kids. And so spent a number of years there, great experience. We were acquired by Johnson & Johnson. And so kind of going from there, knew I wanted to go even earlier stage into a company. And so when the opportunity of the Honey Pot came along, it was an absolute no-brainer. So as Tom mentioned, the Honey Pot is a really incredible personal wellness brand. We started in 2012 when our founder, Beatrice Dixon, was suffering from bacterial vaginosis for a number of months, almost a year actually. And so she went to the doctor, she used antibiotics, she always joked she was like going to the Google forums, which is the last place you should go for vaginal wellness advice. But I think what it ultimately revealed to her was that there wasn't a great solution in the marketplace for humans who are experiencing vaginal pH imbalances. And so one night, her grandmother, whom she had never met, her grandmother passed when her mother was young, came to her in a dream and said to her, there are these incredible naturally derived ingredients that you can combine into an intimate foaming wash that will help you address that pH imbalance that you've been suffering with. And so he woke up, she grabbed those ingredients and started formulating, and spent several years actually formulating to come up with what that has now become sort of one of our number one intimate washes. But what was really compelling about that is, she started from this place of personal need. And I think when you think about, how brands can build and really become those sticky brands, a lot of it does start with meeting a personal need. And so, the state of the vaginal wellness industry at that point was, I would say, pretty terrible. I mean, there was, not a ton of transparency in terms of the ingredients they were using. Brands were very kind of leaning heavily on sort of gross chemicals. The whole category was rooted in shame, which is actually a really important part of what we are doing as a brand, is lifting out from the shame and actually empowering people with information and education. And the category wasn't really growing. So while that's really terrible for the state of kind of the vaginal wellness category and the humans who were using those products, it created this incredible opportunity for Bee and the Honey Pot to really emerge as the answer. And so from that first wash that we formulated to today, our brand has really been driven by kind of three core sort of obsessions, I would call them. The first is obsession with efficacy. So leaning on the power of plant-derived ingredients in order to make products that work. And at the end of the day, if your product doesn't work, you're not going to be able to build a community. So all of our products are clinically tested. They lean on the power of natural ingredients, naturally derived ingredients. And so that combination of products that work has really been kind of the basis of us building our community. The next core piece has been really, really focusing on those humans that have been kind of near and dear to the brand from day one. So for the first several years, before we sold a single bottle at Target or Walmart, Beatrice, our founder, and our other co-founder, Sai, were going to different hair shows and different, showing up sort of in spaces where humans with vaginas were, and they were talking to their consumer target. They would ask questions about how people's kind of vaginal wellness was going. They gave away product for free, then they started selling the product, and they effectively created this 2 or 3 year beta time period where they were giving away product, tweaking the formula, learning what was working, making sure that the formula could kind of optimize to meet that consumer need that wasn't being filled. And so when you think about kind of building community for them, they were in it. Val, you kind of mentioned this too, like in the market, they were in it with the consumers, talking to all these humans to understand what their unique challenges were. And so inherent in that was the ability to kind of build a set of products that were rooted in a true consumer need with a deeper understanding of who those consumers were, and not just that kind of cursory high-level understanding. So it's been a model that's worked really, really well for us. The third element of what we do in every single product and every single dollar that we spend from a marketing perspective is really that obsession around education. So another core element missing from this category, but many categories, is the ability to truly give people education and information that can enhance their personal wellness. And so the brand started 12 years ago, but kind of in the last 12 years, we have been so focused on really making sure the products work, making sure we are doing everything in service of our community, and making sure we are breaking down barriers and normalizing what's very normal through education.
Great, love that. I mean, I think that notion of a place where there was a lack of trust, a suffering in silence, a sense of shame, the way through that is to bring a community, a personal touch through there, and I think you guys have achieved that amazingly well. And it must have obviously been a conscious decision as much as it was an organic way the brand started. So what was that kind of blueprint, that philosophy towards community that you guys embedded right from the start?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think right from the start, we had the vision of treating humans as full humans. I think historically in the vaginal wellness category, but in many categories, brands look at you in a silo. They think about you as somebody who has this problem over here, this problem over here, this need over here. And what the Honeypot has been able to do from day one is really look at you as a whole person, think through what are your holistic needs for wellness, and then how do we answer those both with products and education. And that has truly been, I think, what has helped to gain the trust of our community, because we're not just telling them they should be ashamed of something that is very, very normal, some of the challenges they're experiencing, but rather we're shedding light on how normal those experiences are. We're shedding light on the combination of the experiences that humans with vaginas have, and we're educating around how someone can take care of themselves in the best possible way. And that ability to, I think, really see people where they are and see them as whole humans as opposed to individual problems has differentiated us from a community perspective, it's differentiated us from a retail perspective, and it's been very, very powerful in terms of driving growth on the brand.
And that's interesting. How do you define your audience? What are the sort of hallmarks that unite them? Right? Because obviously it's humans with vaginas is a vast group of people, but what is it about your community which are the hallmarks of their behaviors, their drivers, their lifestyle?
Yeah, so we talk about our community members as our aunties. And so those of you not familiar with the term auntie, an auntie is somebody who is sort of the expert in life. The person you turn to if you have a question, if you're not sure about what's happening. They really are kind of elevated in terms of their overall understanding of what's happening in the world, what's happening in their personal life, and so they're the person you turn to and trust. And so I think one of the things that we've been very focused on in terms of thinking about that audience building is what are the unique needs of those aunties, those people who are really kind of the thought leaders and they're commonly a step ahead of everyone else. How do we make sure that we're best serving them through education, through products, that they then very organically are willing to share with their communities? And I think in the sort of vaginal wellness space, both menstrual and hygiene, it historically has been a very generational category, so people pass down brands that they use or pass down routines that they've used. And by kind of going after this sort of core consumer, this auntie, this thought leader, we're actually breaking that generational element because now we're not relying on just passing information down, but rather this auntie is actually telling their friends, they're telling their nieces, they're telling their mom about what products or how they can take care of themselves better. And so that's been really important to us because it's helping us to accelerate much needed change in the category.
Amazing. And just on a practical note, obviously in that origin story, you went to where the people were and you kind of walked amongst them, as it were. As you become a bigger brand, as you are showing up across the country, across a bunch of different retailers, how do you keep fostering that sense of community? What are the tools, the techniques you use to ensure you're getting that two-way engagement?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we have a promise to our community that we are going to democratize wellness for them, both inside and out, through the power of herbs, science, and education. So we keep that promise near and dear to every decision we're making, both from a product perspective, or marketing activation perspective, or an education perspective. So that's at the center of everything we're doing. Inherent in that is our sort of 4 key brand pillars, which are confidence, wellness, transparency, and education. So those 4 elements are also highly present in everything that we're doing. So as we are thinking about expanding our community reach, we're keeping that promise and those pillars at the center of everything we're doing. We actually have our amazing head of community and social here today, Desiree, who has been really instrumental in building this. And so Des came in about 3 years ago, and she, I would say, has been such a leader in taking us from kind of a small to medium-sized brand, really thinking about expanding us out into that kind of broader reach, but doing it in a very high-touch way. So some of the incredible tools that Des and her team deploy are, there's a lot of very careful listening that happens. So through social, through our customer experience, we actually look to kind of hear directly from our community what they're saying. Des does a phenomenal job of sort of monitoring social chatter to also be aware of sort of what's happening outside the ethos of our brand, and then bringing that feedback in for continuous consumer feedback loops that help then inform how we can scale our marketing efforts based on that feedback very directly. We are making sure that as we're showing up at sort of community events, we're doing so with leading with education and leading with being able to make sure that we're transparent about what we're doing. And we found that even kind of in the non-real life environment, those sort of core brand pillars are really propelling people's interest in continuing to stick with the brand. And then I would say, finally, we are incredibly authentic in the way that we speak. And so that can happen in any number of channels that you communicate through. But the power of authenticity is that, consumers know when they're being sold. And so what our brand has tried to do really, really very intentionally is offering products, explaining the benefits, explaining the science-backed clinical testing nature of them, but maybe more importantly, giving away that education for free to help provide our community with the tools that they need for better personal wellness. And what we found is that, ability to help our community feel seen in topics and places where they haven't ever felt seen, it actually creates this greater level of stickiness and loyalty. So they're not only willing to come back to us and buy across the brand, they're actually very willing to do that work of advocating to their friends, family, nieces, aunties, themselves. And so that has been, our approach in the community has actually generated that sort of broader community build.
Yeah, that very sort of uncontrived, authentic approach, tone of voice is such a hallmark of this brand, but it's also a hallmark of other brands that build those kind of communities of love and advocacy around them. I wonder, the impact that the community has made actually on your business. What marketing decisions has it informed? What new innovation decisions has it informed? And equally, what stuff has it led to that you guys are most proud of doing and putting out there?
That's a great question. Like I said, we've tried really hard to make sure we're staying connected to our community through social listening, through some of the organic channels that we own. And so, we do sort of that kind of passive listening, which has been helpful to inform things like where we need to continue to create more education, what kind of products we might need to introduce, sort of what are the other gaps in the marketplace right now. And then we do have an incredible loyalty program, a loyalty following on our website. And so we often engage them in consumer research to understand where are their needs, what are their needs from a product and an education perspective. What are some of the challenges that they're facing outside of our categories? So for instance, menopause is obviously a topic that everyone's trying to figure out, and I would say nobody's really done it that successfully yet. And so, our community can become a really great arbiter of information for us as we're thinking about going into new spaces. And so we test some of our new ideas and our new concepts with them. And I think what we have found is that, as we are kind of really actively listening, it's equally important to take the feedback. So you can't just say, we're going to listen to you, we're going to listen to you, we're going to listen to you, but then you actually have to show up and take the feedback. So I think what's great is we have a really committed, active community who will talk to us on social. They'll send emails to our customer experience team. They'll talk to us when we're in these kind of in-person events. And the key then is really about acting on their feedback. And we as an organization are very committed to evolution. I think where brands get in trouble is if they are talking at the consumer and not willing to listen. But for us, actually listening and hearing what people are saying and hearing that feedback and then figuring out how to strengthen our position even more is actually kind of the approach that we're taking.
Yeah, I think that dialogue, that exchange, not just of value, but exchange of values, I think is really important. You mentioned to me yesterday something really cool is happening in Times Square.
Yeah, we've got a billboard. So check it out while you're here. It is the first time the word vagina has been plastered in massive font in Times Square. So try to check it out while you're in the vicinity. But that was a really important kind of out-of-home effort for us to be able to really start to normalize dialogue around vaginal wellness, which is still very much so not normal. But when you think about it, over 50% of the population has a vagina, so we shouldn't be shying away from the discussion. And to the extent that I think especially kind of generations coming up behind us are not going to be willing to shy away from the conversation. And so we view our role at the Honey Pot as kind of really being able to sweep that into kind of normalcy by using the words, putting it out there. We've got some other really great activations happening right now. We've kicked off more intense work around college campuses. So, that's a set of humans that are making purchase decisions for the first time. And so we have incredible programming happening throughout the fall at several HBCUs, which are historically Black colleges and universities, to help educate that community on the power of taking care of themselves and their personal wellness, and how the Honey Pot can be a part of that, but how also they can just better understand themselves through kind of the power of education. So that's been a major initiative. And so we're really excited. I think we're continuing to focus on just getting out of home more and getting in front of our consumers more, while still making sure that that stickiness around community is at the center of everything we do. But we know we've got the proof point that this product means something, this brand means something, and so we're at that incredible spot now where we can start to scale.
Great. Time check. How are we doing? What do you think now? 20 minutes? So what does the future for the brand look like as you grow? How are you going to keep nourishing community? And then second, I'd just love to hear your thoughts on the other brands and leaders in the room. What other lessons you guys have learned that they can take away from this and try and apply in their own worlds?
Yeah, great question. So I think for us, as we think about the future and expansion, it all has to make sense in the context of who our community is. So you're not going to see us introduce a lipstick. That wouldn't necessarily make sense, but I think there's a lot of opportunity for us to continue to expand from a product perspective to take care of other elements of a human's personal wellness. And so I think as we look to kind of that future, we're really excited to continue to be present in the personal care routine that our humans have, but also equally important for us, it really is now about scaling. So right now, we're only in about 4.5% of households, that's our penetration. So really, really kind of low at this point, so we are just getting started, which is really exciting. We've got incredible retail presence, but we know that as we continue to educate around the role of pH and vaginal wellness, that household penetration is going to skyrocket. So for us, that's sort of the next steps are just continuing to be a bigger part of people's wellness routine on a daily basis, both with the categories we're in now and thinking about expanding into other categories. And as I think about kind of our key lessons in terms of how we've done this and what we'll do in the future, I think establishing a really clear promise to your community that is truly rooted in transparency and authenticity is really important. Again, consumers and humans can sniff immediately when there is a lack of transparency or a lack of authenticity. So I think doing the hard work as a brand to really make sure that what you're offering is resonating with consumers and that you're keeping that two-way dialogue open with your community versus just speaking at them. I think one of the other keys for us has been just not only the willingness, but embracing evolution. So what worked 10 years ago, maybe isn't the same set of tools that's going to work 5 years ago, that's going to work now, it's going to work in the future. So for us, as long as we're keeping those brand pillars at the center of everything we're doing, the way we actually show up in your life may change, but you as our community and consumer are going to stay in the center of it all. And so that commitment to evolution is really important. I think especially from a product perspective, because there's great new information coming out all the time in terms of ingredients and formulations and things like that. So our commitment will continue to be evolution. And then I think humbleness. I would say that as you think about kind of your interaction with your communities, that humbleness, that sort of true partnership is really important because, again, there's a difference between a product and something you have to functionally buy and a brand that you feel like is a partner. And so our goal is always to feel like that friend that you would turn to. And so as a brand, that really requires the ability to be humble, to be able to be sort of willing to partner and willing to listen. So.
And my big takeaway is hoping my granny shows up with a brilliant idea and a dream. Well, thank you so much, Laura. That was fascinating. I'm sure everyone wants to say thank you. And I'm sure everyone has much better questions than I do, so who first?
Hi, my name is Rachel. I work with Donohue and I work with Belfast Ventures. One of the great things as I've gone through with big company and small company is trying to figure out how you identify those brand pillars. I think it's great once you have them, but when you're a small company, how do you get them? So can you talk a little bit about whether it's agencies or tools or research that you did to get to those brand pillars that are now the foundation of everything you do?
It's a great question. So we are a highly collaborative culture. I think that there is a really strong feeling that we get to a better endpoint by bringing in diversity of perspective. So for us, I think the pillars really came about by collaboratively reflecting on what success we had in the past and figuring out how to articulate those into a handful of words that could then dictate what we were doing in the future. I think that we kind of arrived at those and formally kind of set those pillars in 2021, early 2021. So the brand, really officially launched in 2014. We were targeted in 2017. So it took a number of years before we got, but I think that they were already inherent in kind of what we were doing on a day-to-day basis, which is how we arrived at them. So I think for us, it was about the collaborative dialogue, reflecting back on what had been working for us as a brand, and then thinking about what we wanted to be doing. We always talk about kind of the importance of being the change in the world that you want to be, and I think that we don't necessarily, as a brand, want to continue to carry on the way the category had been carried on, and so for us, it was just as much about what had been working for us as where we wanted to continue to push not only our brand, but the overall category in the interest of kind of delivering for our community and our consumers.
How do you think, so interesting brand that's completely changed the category that used to be old. I'm a dad of 3 daughters, so, and my wife's a pediatrician. So this is just an interesting, it comes up at dinner too much.
No, that's good, that's what we want. We want it to come up with dinner especially with dads.
But what I'm interested in is this is a category that that was very staid and old. It was like the grandmother's category, right? And how do you think about reinventing the category as a challenger brand? How do you think about the old competitors? How do you be positioned against them?
Yeah, great question. So we as a brand, I mentioned earlier, have been always from day one thinking about the human holistically. So for a human with a vagina, you are going to, in a certain age range, you're going to get a period every month. So we have an incredible set of menstrual products, a broad range of types of menstrual products, so that whatever your need is, whether you choose tampons or pads or cups, we've got an answer for you. On the flip side, we also have this sort of daily proactive hygiene set of products. So we have washes and wipes. And so for us, part of what we've been able to draw on is the power of this category that people are automatically shopping because they have a period every month, and helping to also kind of educate around the role of these proactive categories like a wash and a wipe in order to kind of build out that ritual. Because to your point, many people, still to this day, the household penetration for an intimate wash is only about 5%. So to this day, we have 95% of the households that we can continue to go after and really grow that category to be part of what is really meant to be kind of a daily ritual. And so for us, the way we've done it, the menstrual piece is a little bit more telegraphic for people. On the hygiene side, for us, what we've done is we've done an incredible and tremendous amount of education around the role of balanced pH. So if your vaginal pH is balanced, many of the issues, whether they be infections and things of that nature, that could happen, don't happen because you're pHed. And so for us, it's been a big educational lift around helping not only our sort of community as it stands today, but as we think about expanding, helping people understand the role of a balanced pH as part of overall wellness. And that's a really big pivot versus what the category typically oriented is, which is around you don't want your vulva to smell. And so for us, we don't want to root things in the sense of like you should be ashamed your vulva smells. We're saying we're going to help you figure out how to use a daily set of products that will help keep your pH balanced such that the odor that is emanating from your vagina, whatever it is going to be a natural one because it's emanating in the context of a balanced pH. And so for us, it really is about trying to remove that shame and that stigma, which the category had so dramatically relied on. It was like making people afraid, so you should go buy these products. And that's just not a great way to interact or to inspire. And so for us, it's been about leading with the pH education, explaining that these products will help you get there, but then more importantly, like normalizing the things that you're experiencing as normal. And that's, kind of to like create that pivot from the category, which has been category other kind of legacy players, which have largely been rooted in shame and making you feel bad and making you feel like you can't talk about what's happening. When in the reality is, if your daughters are experiencing or your wife is experiencing something, like it's very likely that 50% of the population is also experiencing that. So really trying to normalize.
Good morning, Marco Hudson with Quad. You touched on the importance of community and this idea of transparency and authenticity, which is awesome. So as you're thinking about something like influencer marketing, how did you potentially leverage that and kind of walk that fine line between strengthening your community and potentially tainting it depending on who you tap into?
I will do my best to answer this question in front of the actual expert in the room, Desiree. But I think what Desiree and her team have done such a phenomenal job of is really focusing on the kind of our promise to our community, our pillars, as the basis of any brief out to a potential influencer partner. And then she and her team do a phenomenal job of really scrubbing through. It's probably a more manual process than it is in most instances to make sure that there's that core values alignment with influencers. And so we are also, we use the word influencers lightly, like we really look to content partners, people who share the values that we share, who share the interest in really helping further human wellness, as opposed to just that quick, okay, get it up, Amazon storefront, sell 1 million units. And so Des and her team have done a phenomenal job of keeping that kind of high touch approach I mentioned earlier, infused into how we're actually thinking about sort of partners as well. And then they also do a phenomenal job of listening, right? You don't get it right every time. I don't actually think you've got it wrong yet, Des, but there's a chance that you might end up with a partner that isn't the right partner down the road. But Des and her team are so on top of the social listening to understand how our assets reacting, how's the community reacting to assets, and then her team does a phenomenal job of every month sharing out the learnings. So every month they're looking at how posts have done, whether they're our own posts or through influencer content partners, and then taking those learnings and figuring out what we want to do more of, and maybe what didn't work as hard for us as it could have, or maybe what is, just with algorithm changes and things like that, what's no longer as present. And so I would say Desiree and her team do a phenomenal job of really leveraging data to help drive those future decisions.
One more question. Yes, sir.
I'm with Snapchat. This is a former P&G. So I'm very curious to see, do you think the Honeypot brand will survive in a multinational, kind of like Ben & Jerry's?
Oh yeah, I mean there's people who do this all over the world, and I think what I always say is that I think when you look at the role of some of the legacy brands and things like that, and you think about the way that consumers are changing, consumers are increasingly interested in transparency, in ingredients, in making sure that they're aligned values-wise with the brand. And so the Honeypot has sort of built itself around those ideas. And so as we look to expand into other countries or into other markets, there are nuances, as Val said earlier today, that there's nuances to every every market, and so we'll have to be mindful of how we show up in any given market. And some, it may be more comfortable to talk about vaginal wellness, and others, it may not be culturally acceptable. So, as always, when you expand, you need to be thinking about kind of that market that you're expanding into. But the beauty is that the honeypot embodies where consumers are increasingly focused. And so for us, we see nothing but upside. Even within the context of the US, we're still only present in about 5% of doors. So we have an incredible amount of runway here. We've got runway all over the world. And when we go to different parts of the world, it will really be about that community first focus to make sure that we're launching in a way that makes sense for that market.
Very good. Thank you, everybody, for great questions, great listening. Thank you so much, Laura.